Welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays, where I talk about things that are on my mind. Obviously, there's an emphasis on French horn, but also bigger picture. Today, I was working with a student a few days ago, and I started kind of talking about the 3 year rule. Now, it's not really an official rule, it's more of an observation. But there's a book many people probably have heard. There's a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell that has a chapter called the 10,000 hour rule. And in its simplest form, it basically says that any expert in a field has spent the equivalent of 10,000 hours of purposeful practice, which my observation in life is that that is true. When I look over the 30 years of playing horn and the equivalent of, at this point, I've probably put in somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 hours. And I've literally noticed kind of every 10 years, kind of a shift. I don't want to say, because I don't even think I'm ever going to call myself an expert because I'm constantly learning. But I can see these kind of 10-year leaps in terms of my growth, whether it's my playing ability, my understanding, my wisdom, whatever you want to call it. But as I was helping a kid process, I also have noticed this other thing in my life as a teacher, and that is what I'm going to call the 3 year rule. And basically, in its simplest form, it basically states that I think it takes approximately 3 years for any system to take root. Now, it doesn't mean that it fully, perfects or anything, but it takes three years. And so and I was trying to, help my student with this idea of perspective on how long things take and having to stick within a system. And so I'm going to share kind of a personal journey. So I was a teacher for 15 years. I took over a program in Salem as my first job. It was a big 6A school. And even though at the time I was about 28, I had been formulating philosophies. I'd been formulating systems and processes. And so, even as a young teacher, I had a pretty good idea of how I thought things should be structured. And so not applied, but I implemented at the time what I considered my music education philosophy. And even though there were some times early in the philosophy where I was uncertain because I was getting feedback that kind of said, you should do it this other way, do it this way. But I kept knowing, like, something in my gut was like, no, your system is your system. It's what you believe in. And so I did it. And what's interesting is it took approximately 3 years for all the consistency, all the work, all the things that I believed in to take root. And so I was in a district that had 6 high schools, and the school I was teaching at, the first 2 years, we were like in our district festival, we were the 6 out of 6. So we were the last place. But I kept implementing, I kept trusting, I kept saying, hey, this is your philosophy, this is your system. And by the 3rd year, instead of being 6 out of 6, we were 4th out of 6. So it was clear that this stuff was working. And then I'm going to and so 3 years, okay, so keep that away, or keep that in mind, file that away. And then I went to a smaller district where I kind of the same thing happened. I took all that knowledge and went to a smaller district, a district that had a better work-life balance. Now, just to be clear, the very first year I took over, we made it to our state contest, but the reason was simple: is there was a small band. All the kids that were in it were kind of juniors and seniors, and they all were eager to play. And so I just took my system, planted it in there, and they were successful. But the problem is, and this is always something for band directors out there, or music educators, or just people that are maybe impatient. The thing that happened the next year was all these kids that had quit band or hadn't played for a while were like, oh, the band's good, let's join back up. And so basically, if you know the law of averages, it meant I had high good students here, but then all these new low students, so the average. So what happened after that is because I had to adjust and stuff, but I kept sticking with my process, was that it took another 3 years for us to get back to state. Again, it's a very interesting phenomenon. Now, I'm sharing this for a specific reason. I'm sharing this because I know as human beings we're impatient. I know that sometimes we lose sight. And so what I'm really trying to help, whether it's music educators, whether it's horn players that are young, or whether it's, seasoned professionals that maybe are in their own ups and downs, because I've been there, ups and downs, is that we have to remember that things take time. And I think if you can just remember kind of this 3 year rule that, and I don't have a name for it, but it might help just maintain perspective that things kind of take longer than we think. All right. So all that being said is, then COVID hit, and then I had to rebuild my program again. And again, I saw the same pattern. So that's the thing. One of the things that I'm decent at is observing patterns of reality. And so to anyone that's listening, I would say that if you're in a place where maybe you're feeling negative or feeling unsure, just remember this idea that things take longer than we think. And so if you haven't been dedicating 3 years of consistent energy, time, effort, whatever you want to call it, towards an endeavor, like mainly horn playing, but in general, just realize you maybe haven't been giving yourself enough time to let things take root, right? To get stronger, to lay the foundation. And so I don't know if this is an immutable law of life, but I do know that in my observable experience, there is a pattern of about 3 years. So just ask yourself, look in the mirror and say, am I giving myself enough time? Am I being patient enough? Have I allowed it to take root? Now this, again, I wish I could say that's, 3 years, absolutely. I don't know. I just want you to, it's a patience exercise. So anyway, with today's Wisdom Wednesdays, I just thought I would share that because it was on my mind, and I was working with a student and started kind of talking about this concept. And so I hope it's a valuable perspective, and see you in the next video.